Hey guys, it's Miss Jones. We are going to talk about asexual and sexual reproduction. So, how we are going to first talk about the hierarchy of how these cells work. So, the hierarchy always goes from small to large. So, your hierarchy is the fact that cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up organ systems make up organisms. Now, if you look here, you'll see the pictures. You've got your cells. It makes up the tissue that makes the organs. So your kidneys create our your waist, your lungs for your breathing, your heart for the blood to pump through, and so forth. It makes up the organs, make up the organ systems, and the organ system makes up the organism. So we are an organism. It always goes from small to large. So some examples of that are cells perform a specific function. Skin cells, brain cells. Skin cells create a protection for our organs. So that is where they are important. Then you have your brain cells that actually create your brain. Then you have your tissues, a group of cells working together for a specific function, your nervous tissue, your muscle tissue. So you have your muscle tissue that helps you move. Then you have your organs, a group of tissues working together for a specific function, such as your heart, your liver. So your heart and liver are the organs inside your body. The organ systems is the group of those organs working together for a specific function, such as the circulatory system or the skeletal system. Like your heart is part of the circulatory system. Your heart pumps the blood through your body to help the other organs function. Then it creates an organism, which is several organ systems sustaining life for organisms. So that is kind of where we come into play. Now, to talk about this, we're going to talk about the scientists that actually discovered cells and how they went about discovering them. So Robert Hooke, he discovered cells through a microscope. He called them tiny little boxes. He thought all cells, even though most of the cells are round, he put them in tiny little boxes. Then you've got Anton van Leeuwenhoek. He used a microscope to discover single-cell organisms in pond scum. He called them animalcules. Then you've got Mathis, Schweinlinden discovered all plant parts had cells in them. So all plants had cells in them. He discovered this in 1838. Then you had Theodore Schwann. He found that all animals are composed of cells. This was part of the development of the cell theory. So then you had Rudolf Virchow. He concluded that cells come from other cells, that all cells originate from some other pre-existing cell, and then they divide and make other cells. So the cell theory is what we are talking about. It was actually our bell ringer for Wednesday that I put on the sheet for you. The first one is all organisms are composed of one or more cells. So Schweinlinden and Schwann came up with that theory. The second theory is the cell is the basic unit of life in all living things. And then the third theory is that all cells come from other cells. So we are going to talk about asexual reproduction. So this is a type of reproduction in which a new organism is produced from one parent and the offspring is identical to the parent. It occurs in most plants, bacteria, protists, and low invertebrates. The cell in our bodies reproduce asexually through a process called mitosis. So, you have your asexual reproduction, you have your cell division, and each cell, as it breaks up, it creates offspring, such as two daughter cells. But with asexual reproduction, remember that there's only one parent and that they create offsprings that are identical to them. And this process is called mitosis. So, asexual reproduction, remember, one parent, offsprings are identical to the parent. So you'll see the worm, and he's one parent, and he created his offspring, and they are actually identical to him. What are some of the advantages of asexual reproduction? Some of the advantages are you get the good characteristics from the parent. So if the parent is like, a numero uno, you get the good characteristics. The disadvantage is basically the same thing. You get the bad characteristics, and you're less able to adapt to the environment. So if your parent was not able to adapt to the environment, you're not going to be able to adapt to the environment, and there's no way for you to change because you got the good and the bad characteristics of your parents, or of the parent. So asexual reproduction, there's certain types of it. You have one called regeneration. Regeneration is organisms uses cells divisions to regrow body parts, such as a starfish or a salamander or a lizard. When you cut a starfish, one of their points off, it grows back. Same thing with salamanders and lizards. If you cut a lizard's tail off, it grows back. So it regrows. Another type of asexual reproduction is called runners. This results in a new plant that is genetically identical to the parent plant. It's a clone of that plant. So you have like strawberry plants and vegetable plants and crops. They are kind of like runners. So they're all connected on the vine. And the plant itself, or the cells in the plant, are identical to the parent plant. So like watermelon would be another one. And pumpkins, even though they might have different sizes, their genetic makeup is still identical to the parent. Then you have another one called budding, which is another type of asexual reproduction. And this organism that produces a bud that breaks away to live on its own. One of the examples is hydra, which is the water. Now, another type of example is pollen in flowers. It leaves the plant, or the leaves on a plant can fall to the ground and produce another organism on its own. Asexual reproduction is another type, is binary fission. Now, we talked a little bit about binary fission when we talked about the multicellulars and the protists earlier in the previous unit. You probably didn't really know what it was, but now we're going to talk about what it is. So it is used by a bacteria and organisms whose cells do not contain a nucleus copy, then divide into two identical organisms, such as a bacteria. So you have your organism, and the cells does not contain the nucleus part. So then it's copied and it divides into two identical organisms. Remember, all asexual reproduction, you are one parent and you are identical to your parent. So now we're going to talk about sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is two parents. So you have two parents with different makeup. Your offspring are a combination of both parents and are therefore different. You get different information from each parent, or different characteristics from each parent. So you are unique and diverse based on the information that you got, or the characteristics you got from your parents. So haven't you ever heard people say, oh, you've got your mother's eyes or your dad's nose? And that is true. That is part of sexual reproduction. Part of the advantages is you get a variety and a diversity of offspring, color, shape, size, intelligence, ability. You're more able to adapt to environmental changes. So have you ever wondered, I have two brothers. One of them is smarter than I am. Sure. So did he get the intelligence from my mom or my dad? We just don't know. We know he got a combination of it from both of them. One of the disadvantages of it's a uniqueness. Sometimes traits needed for survival are not passed on. So if my mother had some type of gene that I did not get, but it was something that I needed to survive, and it was not passed on to me, or it may not have been passed on to me. So that's one of the disadvantages of sexual reproduction, because you're not identical to your parents. Types of sexual reproduction are plants. When the reproductive cells of one plant fertilizes or pollinates the reproductive cell of another plant, this seed that can grow into a new plant. So this is kind of what I was talking about with the budding, but that was asexual. That is where a piece of that plant falls off and forms a new plant. But this is where the actual plant itself fertilizes. So like bees fertilize other plants, or the stamens take the other plants and fertilize or drop their seeds, and another plant can grow. But they have to have another plant to help them do that. Animals, when they reproductive cells of one another animal fertilize the reproductive cells of another animal, this produces a baby called an embryo. So if you see, you've got a peacock, and I'm going to say this is a geese. They form, one has an egg and one has a sperm. They form an egg, and then they form a baby, which is an embryo, because that egg has produced the embryo. So reproduction process is mitosis and meiosis. So in mitosis, which is the asexual side, you have a parent cell right here. Then you have your DNA replicates, and it produces two offsprings. But these are what? Identical to the parent. So in meiosis, you have your parent cell, the DNA replicates, it does break out into the two daughter cells, but then the two daughter cells can come into the four daughter cells. So when you have mitosis, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. In meiosis, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because they can break down and break down and break down. So mitosis versus meiosis. Mitosis produces two identical daughter cells. The cells are created from mitosis, are diploid or 2N. Now if you see down at the bottom right here, you have the definition of what a diploid or 2N is. A diploid is two of each type of chromosomes in a homologous pair carrying the same trait. So in mitosis, remember, it's asexual. They carry the same trait. And then meiosis, it produces 4 genetically different daughter cells. The cells created from meiosis are haploid or N, which down here, haploid is one of each type of chromosome. So all humans have 46 types of chromosomes. You do have some that have more or less, and then there's other issues that go along with that. We'll talk about that later. But all humans have 46 chromosomes. In diploid, therefore, the diploid number of a 2N of chromosomes in humans is 46. That's because all the chromosomes have to be identical. In a haploid, the haploid number of chromosomes in humans is 23. So when you're when you're asexual, you get all 46 of your parents' chromosomes. When you're sexual, you only get 23 from one parent and 23 from another. So why does mitosis occur? It's to replace other cells that have been damaged or worn out. It's to allow multicellular organisms to grow. It's for asexual reproduction and because they get too big. So basically what happens is they break apart and they create identical offspring. Why does meiosis occur? Meiosis results in the four cells with half the number of chromosomes so that when the sex cells, the sperm and the egg combine, the original or normal number of chromosomes will be restored. So we as humans, women are the egg cell and men are the sperm cell. So now, where does it occur? Mitosis, is the body cells, for example, like skin cells. You know, when you cut yourself, it grows back, and that's how it regenerates itself. Remember, we talked about the salamander and the starfish. It regenerates when you cut something off. It regenerates. So when you cut your hand, the skin forms the cells and covers back up. Meiosis is sex cells, example, an egg and a sperm only. You have to have an egg and a sperm in order to have meiosis. So I hope that this helped you with your information. If you have any questions, please ask in class or when we're done, when you're done taking the notes. And have a good evening.